Hi and welcome. My name is Lawrence Baker. New year, new life, new house. Off we go. A guide to blend modes in Photoshop. If you know nothing, this video is for you. If you know a little bit, this video is for you. So where do blend modes appear? Where there's any tool that's got pixels involved in it, blend modes appear. There's more than you think there are, but the important ones I'll come to in a minute. But layers definitely have them. Adjustment layers, drawing tools, apply image and calculations, layer styles, fill command, the list goes on. Blend mode usage examples. Well, image compositing is the number one thing, I believe anyway, for most people. Layer styles definitely all rely on blend modes. Apply image and calculations have to use blend modes. High pass sharpening, non-destructive dodging and burning. The list goes on. This is just a few examples. I'll probably try and show you definitely high pass and non-destructive dodging and burning. What do blend modes actually do? Well, simply put, they blend two pixels together by applying a calculation to one pixel that affects the output values of both pixels combined. This calculation can be applied to each channel, red, green or blue in an RGB document, or to the composite channel, red, green and blue combined. These calculations can be based on luminance, color, hue and saturation singly or in combination. These calculations can be simple like add and subtract, divide and multiply, or reasonably complex like soft light. They are reasonably simple calculations, but if you're not numerate like me, they can seem quite difficult, especially soft light. But subtract and add are very straightforward. The best way to visualize blend modes is with layers. So always remember that every screen has a pixel grid. Taking two layers with no transparency on them, one pixel of one layer lays on top or underneath a pixel exactly on another layer. So it's pixel to pixel. So the calculations for blend modes are taking place on a pixel to pixel basis on the pixel grid. On a simple two-layer document, the blend mode will normally be applied to the top layer, which is called the blend layer, and the bottom layer is called the base layer. Now you can have many layers with blend modes on them, but to make it easy, normal use is just two layers. There are some blend modes where reversal of the layer order will make no difference to the result. This is called a commutative blend mode. And something like multiplication or multiply, which uses multiplication, 5 times 6 is 30, 6 times 5 is 30. So layer order makes no difference. It'll become clearer in a minute. So let's use multiply on an 8-bit image. 8-bit images have 256 levels of grey or luminance. 0 is black and 255 is white. Normally, that's how we work in Photoshop. Multiply works on each individual channel, red, green and blue. By the way, 8-bit, 256 levels of grey in each channel times 256 times 256 times 256 is 16 million plus levels of luminance or tints or shades of colours you can have. Multiply is a commutative blend mode, as we now know, where layer order does not affect the end result. Multiply uses standard math, where 0 is black and 1 is white. So standard math runs from 0 to 1. Not all the blend modes work like that, but a lot of them do. An example of multiply blend mode on an 8-bit image. I will get to Photoshop very soon. Let's assume the red channel of a pixel on one layer is 64. Don't forget multiply works on each individual channel. So it's 64 and on another layer, the same channel is 128. First, we need to convert both numbers to standard math. 64 divided by 256 is 0.25, which is 25% grey. 128 divided by 256 is 0.5, 50% grey. Now we multiply, and this is the multiply blend mode, multiply 0.25 by 0.5, we get 0.125, which is darker than the original pixel values. So on the 0 to 255 scale, 0.125 times 256 is 32. So it's got darker. The result is darker. Multiply will always darken unless one value is pure white, which is 255 or 0. So what we got next? We got the drawing tools, but now we're going to go to Photoshop to see how this works, this multiply works. So I've got a multiply group here. Let's turn that off. So eyedropper tool, mouse over, you can see that's 25% grey when you mouse over, because on HSB, hue, saturation and brightness, it's 25%. On red, green and blue, which is the 255 scale, 0 to 255, it's 64, 64, 64 on each channel. Don't forget multiply works on each individual channel. I'm just making it easy by using greys, basically. It's on normal, the blend mode. If I change it to multiply and go over, it's now 13%. In fact, I think it was 0.125, I think it was with the calculation. Yeah, so it's 12.5, but obviously we're rounding up to 13% and it's RGB 32, and I think it was that. 32, we got 32, but there's a rounding up on the percentages there. So that's how multiply actually works. Now, if that one there was white, and I believe it's Command backspace to fill with white. I think it is. Yes, it's done with white. So if that was white, I'm never going to get below 25%, which is 64, because white is the neutral colour for the darken blend modes, and I'll come to that in a minute, very soon actually. What I will point out is all the darken blend modes have polar opposites, and I'll show them to you now actually. So let's turn that multiply group off. Just a note there, pass-through is the default blend mode for groups. So if you had a lot of blend modes going on within a group, let's say, pass-through will just respect each blend mode as it goes through. If you change it to anything else on the group, let's say you pick multiply, it will treat the group as one image, so it will composite all those blend modes together, then apply that blend mode that you pick instead of pass-through. So you will see pass-through. Don't change it unless you absolutely have to. There's certain techniques that need it changing, but very few. Anyway, let's go to blend modes and show you them in anger. So all this is that there screenshotted and put over here. So normal, which is what we're normally on, and if there's no transparency or no drop in opacity, normal will not show anything below the layer. So any layer below, if it's normal and there's no transparency and opacity is 100%, you won't see anything. Dissolve, I'll show it to you in a minute. It's quite an unusual one. Don't often use it, but I will show it to you. The darken blend modes run from darken to darker color. Obviously, we got multiply there. Their neutral color is white, as we've seen. The lighten blend modes run from lighten to lighter color, and their neutral color is black. And they're the polar opposite of darken. So multiply has a polar opposite, which is screen. And screen works by inverting those figures that we had, multiplying it together, and then inverting the result. So that's what screen does. So they're polar opposites of each other, darken and lighten. The contrast blend modes have 50% grey as their neutral colour, and it makes them very useful. So it's overlay down to hard mix. Inversion is difference down to divide, and component is hue down to luminosity. I don't think I've left anything out there. Let's go back to PowerPoint so I can do drawing tools. So whereas layers work on a pixel to pixel basis on the grid, with the drawing tools it's possible to increase the effect with every brushstroke. For instance, with every brushstroke on a brush using multiply, you will keep darkening until the result eventually reaches black. Behind and clear are drawing tools only, as is linear height, and linear height and height only appear on the texture parts of brushes as well. Very rare. And there's a lot of other blend modes floating around, like in spot healing brush, it has the luminosity blend mode, for instance. Let's check. I mentioned again one more time, darken blend modes. White is not affected or neutral. Lighten blend modes, black is neutral. Contrast, grey is neutral. Just quickly, the shape tool, if you're working with pixels instead of pass or the shape itself, you've got access to all the blend modes, well, the normal ones in the layers. Apply image and calculations definitely use blend modes, they have to, and add exists in those calculations and apply image. So add is really important when you're doing certain things with apply image and calculations. Subtract appears in some of the drawing tools, plus it definitely appears in calculations and apply image. Sponge tool, for instance, this is quite esoteric, has to desaturate and saturate, but it's only applicable to that tool. And dodge and burn highlights have shadow, midtones and highlights, and the blur tool has blend modes as well. I explained the pass-through blend mode, so that's it really for my PowerPoint. So let's get down to proper Photoshop. So I've explained those. Let's show you the brush. Let's turn it on. Let's change that to, let's say, 25% on the HSB. So 25% means if you've got 0 for hue and 0 for saturation, it'll be 25% grey. And it doesn't matter B for brush. I'll make sure it's quite hard actually, so it makes life easier for me. I could start off on normal, I could start off on multiply. It doesn't make any difference. It's only when you start to overpaint that you see the effect of the blend mode. So I'll start off on multiply, but it will only paint 25% grey first. When I go over, you should know what's going to happen. It's going to get darker, darker. Notice the info panel, darker, until eventually I've reached 0 there. So 0%, which is black. Command and Control A, select the whole layer. Backspace will clear it. Top tip there. So if I paint it again, I'm going to paint with screen this time, I think. 25%, I think it was. Yeah, it was. 25%. It's going to get brighter and brighter and brighter until we eventually reach white. Getting there slowly. So yeah, that's how it all works. Now there is behind and clear. Now the whole layer is still selected. Backspace. So let's paint with a different colour, something a bit garish like a red. Make the brush a bit smaller, left-hand square bracket key, and choose a yellow or green. It doesn't make any difference. Use behind. I can basically paint behind. And clear is like the eraser. Basically, it won't affect any transparency. It's like locking the transparency on the layer and you're just painting away like the eraser, or you've locked the transparency basically. So backspace to clear that. So that's the kind of brush dealt with, because unless you're an artist, you won't be getting involved with the brush too much. As I said, there's even linear height and height in some of the brush settings as well. Command and Control D to deselect. So I think that's enough now. Let's show you where blend modes really start to work. Now, this gentleman is slightly sort of soft effect this photographer's done. It's not one of my photographs. I will leave a credit down below. I got it off Pexels, PEXELS.com. Let's duplicate the layer, Command and Control J. And what I'm going to do now is right click and turn it to a smart object so I can apply a smart filter. So if you want to apply a smart filter, you have to first have a smart object. So filter, other, high pass, and I'm going to do high pass sharpening, which relies on the contrast blend modes where 50% grey is neutral. Now, the high pass filter creates this grayscale, and it basically, depending on the radius setting, highlights the high frequency detail. That's the texture of the skin, the wrinkles. The jacket is low frequency. You can see no detail on it, but you can see there's no detail, it's grey, which is almost 50% grey. So the contrast blend mode, when we go to use it, will make these areas not show. There won't be any sharpening on them. So this is high pass sharpening using a smart object, using a smart filter, which is the best way of doing it in my personal opinion. So Command 0 as I'm knock that over. So as you bring up the radius, it's going to affect it more and more and more. So it's finding more edges. That's really what radius is doing. So that's probably my limit, because if I go too high, it starts to put colour in and have this really unusual effect. And honestly, it might work for you in some contexts. And I've seen other people use this method, but I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I don't want to see any colour. Now, I've seen people do this, apply a contrast blend mode, and then put a black and white adjustment layer over it to get that really grungy effect. Now, there's a lot of books out from special forces people and, you know, athletes, etc., have these gritty pictures on the front, and it's often the way they do them is do them in black and white and use high pass sharpening. But anyway, I'm talking away here. I should be getting on with it. So okay, that's pretty crunchy. So as it's a smart filter, double click here and change it to one of the blend modes. Now you can't scroll down through like the layer blend modes and see things change, and that's the trouble when you're using blending modes here. But hey, maybe in the future they change it. Overlay, really crunchy actually, but soft light will be a little bit friendlier because soft light's a bit less contrasty than overlay. That's why they're called the contrast blend modes. Hard light definitely will make it much crunchy. You can see where he's shaved. Vivid light, bit more crunchy and a bit brighter actually. Linear light is as far as I'm going to go because I know pen light and hard mix won't work. That's really crunchy. Now, as it's a smart filter, I could double click again and keep bringing it up slightly like so. I'm pushing my luck a little bit, but you can see the effect and you can see how you can use it to grunge stuff up. But obviously much lower radius levels on the high pass filter will basically just give you normal sharpening, and it won't sharpen the areas, or it tries not to, where there's just smooth color. It's picking up hairs on his jacket. You can see a hair there and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what high pass sharpening is all about. And if I was playing around now, I might add a black and white adjustment layer to it and to give it a more punchy effect. So, you know, that's a contrast blend mode being used. Now let's get rid of those a sec or turn them off. Command and Control J for another layer. New layer, Shift, Command and Control N. I'm going to change the blend mode to overlay, and I'm basically going to fill with 50% grey. So I'm going to use dodge and burn non-destructively. So dodge and burn, so pick, I might pick burn first, which obviously make things darker. I'm painting non-destructively on that layer. Now you know that 50% grey won't be affected. This will be non-destructive, and I'll show you why in a minute. So let's darken this down. Let's zoom in, Command or Control plus, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm darkening it down there, darkening the highlights, so probably should be darkening the mid-tones actually. I don't think people do enough dodging and burning, and it really can help with portrait photographs. So I'm making them look worse because I'm darkening stuff down and around there as well, trying to make them look older as a matter of fact. And I might Alt key kept pressed, it goes to the dodge tool, bring it down a little bit, brighten it up there. It's just to show you now, if I turn off that background layer, you can see what I've done. So you can go in and correct things. That's what's meant by non-destructive in this respect, because dodge and burn normally is destructive. So you're working on a separate layer. So let's go and do a bit of compositing. It's an image I took a couple of weeks ago, actually. Sea fog in bright weather, actually. This fog just came in on top of a hill. You can see the sea in the background there. I'm going to turn it into a book. I'm just playing around. I don't quite know what I'm going to do. Crop tool first to make it look more like a book. Let it catch up. My system's very old at the moment. I can't afford a new system. I'm sure a lot of us can't at the moment. Things are not good. So that I'll do is more, it's quite book-like, and I'm going to press return to set the crop. I'm not deleting the crop pixels either. Let's duplicate the layer. We're not affecting that layer. I'm going to place something in it, embed something in. So File, Embed, and I've been playing around with Donald Trump recently. It doesn't sound right, does it? Let's find an image I've got down here. Donald for video. I might use that. I'm going to place it in. I'll leave it like that. I'm just going to press return. Any one of these tools here, the object selection tool, quick selection or magic wand, you've got access to select subject, select subject. I'm not going to go into the select a mask workspace. I'm just going to press the masking symbol here, and straight away, if you've got a selection, it will create a mask like so. Now, I don't want his jacket in, etc., etc., and I'm probably going to move him around, but what I'm going to do first is maybe try the gradient tool to quickly get rid of some of those bits. Make sure when you're working on foreground to transparent and blacks in the foreground, because if you don't, what will happen if you're on black to white, it will just take the whole mask away. If you want to pick away at something like so, you just do this. So I'm picking away at him slightly. I might have to use a brush. I can't come from the top because I know I'll take his head away. So I'm coming from the bottom because I want to lose the jacket really. So I've gone a bit too far there. Oh, I might not mind that actually, go into his face slightly, because I think I've got an idea in my head now. Bit more into his face actually. A bit more up there. Take a big risk, Lawrence. We haven't got time to play around. And right up to his eye there. Don't forget, it's graduated. It's the clue's in the name. And on that bit there as well, up to there. Up to his eyes. I'm really concerned about his eyes more than anything else. So maybe up to his nose about there as well. Yeah, that'll do. And a bit more there because it's showing up a little bit too much there. Yeah, that's it. Move tool. I'm on the layer. Let's move him up. Now I'm going to change the blend mode. I think actually one more gradient tool on that bit there. On the Something there. Don't forget, you can't do anything on a smart object. It is a smart object, so I'm only using it in the mask, so make sure you're in the mask when you do this. And I might use a brush quickly. I'm on black. I might just, and I'll make sure I'm on a soft brush as well. Right down and just quickly dab around here. Right hand square bracket key going to make it a bit larger. It's not moving at the moment. I've had problems with Photoshop recently. Right, blend modes. Now here, you can just go down through. Dissolve, I'll show you quickly. Nothing really works until you start dropping the opacity. So when you drop the opacity, you can see that effect. That it picks random pixels, but it needs opacity to play around with. So let's leave that. Darken, no good. Multiply, starting to get there. Color burn, linear burn, darken color, lighten, bit too much. Screen, bit too much. Linear dodge, lighter color, overlay. It's starting to get how I want it. That might be what I want. Soft light. What you're doing is you're creating a sort of bit of depth with things, really. Save you playing around with mask too much. I have obviously done a bit of masking, but soft light seems to work. That's going to work for me. I'm just going to move them away from there. And actually, Command and Control T. With a smart object, you can only transform, which is warp, etc., or resize. You cannot do any pixel edits. So Command and Control T. I could have used the Move tool and ticked the transform controls, but I'm not. So don't need to press the Shift key. I'm so used to pressing it. I'm really sorry. So I'm just going to press that down. I'm going to bring him down behind that tree, actually, like so. So his eyes are showing up. A little bit bigger. Right, so return. What I meant by the Move tool just then, if you're on the Move tool, you can show transform controls. You can see it and make the changes. Either or, Command and Control T or Move and tick that. Anyway, I think that's working okay. Now I'm going to put a bit of text on here because I want to show you layer styles as well. So T, I'm on Adobe Caslon Pro. I think I might go for a decorative font. CC Monster Mash, that will do. What should we call him? The Beast. I quite like the colour, actually. I must have used it before. Double or triple click, actually. I'll just make it slightly larger. Like so. If you're on the Move tool and you want to centre that, Command and Control A. If you're not on an artboard, this is. And then on the Move tool, just go up here. You can centre it. I'll need to make it slightly larger. So triple click there. Or double click, I think it was, and I might make it just a little bit larger. Press return, Move tool again, and just center him. I think that's okay. Move it down a little bit. Oh, Command or Control D to deselect. That's my fault, sorry. And you can see the smart guides are telling you where to put it anyway. Right, I'm going to change this to something which I quite like. That's a bit too much. Multiply could work. Lighten could work. It's taking too much away from that. Beast, color dodge, linear add. I haven't used the other ones like what I call the ones you hardly ever use, to be totally honest with you. Difference. You could be something you quite like. I'm just looking. Change the color completely. Hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. So I think I'm going to go with linear burn. Yeah, that'll do me. Now, layer styles. Double click on any part of the layer, set the thumbnail or the name. And by the way, blend if sliders, that's another video. You could argue they're part of blend modes. It's about blending, but I would make this video too long if I went into them. So I'm going to put a couple of effects on. So first I'm going to put a stroke on. I've already got a color there and I might stay with that color, green. And I'm on 37 pixels and I'm on the outside. Now I might go to Bevel and Emboss. I'm on Stroke Emboss, and you can see you've got screen and multiply there. If I wanted to make that stroke bevel, and that's what I'm working on, a bit brighter, I can just bring up the screen opacity there and bring down the multiply bit as well. I'll take that down. Yeah, I'm just looking at it. On the stroke again, I could play around with the blend mode and could use, let's say, multiply. You can see it changing in front of me quite a lot, actually. Or I could try overlay. I might actually, see, don't stay on one blend mode because it's there. I might try multiply. It gives it a bit more of an effect and takes away a bit more of that sun as well. So maybe a bit of a outer glow, and you can see it there. Again, blend mode screen, because screen, if you're using white, no matter what you've got underneath, it's going to make it brighter, because that's the way screen works. So if you change it to anything, let's say you change it to a light green, you might get away with something and make it a little bit greener, the glow. But be careful, you want it still to glow. So, yep. So let's bring the opacity up a little bit more as I've played around with it. So I've got a green glow there, and I'm on screen. I could try lighten if I wanted to and see if that worked. Or want to kind of dodge, let's say, linear dodge add. I'm just playing around, just showing you how blend modes can change things. That's okay, and I might put a subtitle in for something to do as I'm playing around here. T again, new text layer or type layer, and I might change the font to something a bit more normal. Serif, I think. Adobe Caslon Pro, and I might make it a bit smaller straight away, like that small, and put he's a very naughty boy. Put it over there. Command and Control A, move tool, just center it, and then I might put a drop shadow on it just to make it a bit more interesting. Just leave that as it is. So yeah, there you go. I might change that font, I don't like it, to something serifed or non-serif, sans serif I should say, and probably Adobe Clean will do. He's a very naughty boy. And move tool, make sure it's centered. Command D. There you go, book cover. So I've just showed you how blend modes can be very, very useful, especially from compositing, and just a few opacity changes, change the blend mode. You can get really sort of 2D effects quite quickly. I mean, I picked this image out of the blue. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I think that font's pretty awful, actually, the colour and everything, but, you know, it is what it is. I changed it to black, actually, or something like white or something. He's a very naughty boy. That's it. That looks a bit better. Not the best choice of font. So that's it. Blend modes, a quick overview. And once you understand them to a certain extent, and once you know how to play around with them, when you're image compositing, they can be really useful, especially overlay and soft light, multiplying screen. They're the big ones as far as I'm concerned. And it's so easy now to play around and, you know, play around with things and see things working in front of you, because you can just go down through the list. Before, you couldn't do that. That's it, guys. Thank you very much.